Hello, lovely podcast listener. It is me, the lovely podcast purveyor, Josh Bloom, coming to you not live, but living from my kitchen table where I record the show each week. I am excited to let you know that the 90-plus minute Come With Me to See video about my tumultuous journey before, during, and after seeing the new Spike Lee film Highest to Lowest is now live on YouTube. Subscribers to my Substack already knew this, so if you want to be informed when I publish my Josh Bloom's Right on Time recap and Come With Me to See video about a classic from my childhood, The Goonies, I urge you to subscribe at superjews.substack.com and you will be informed. To watch the latest video, a link can be found in the show notes. Even though it took 3 months to the day since I saw this film to complete, I am excited and proud of how this video turned out. It contains sibling drama, sausage McMuffin drama, and of course, Spike Lee's latest drama. Please watch and comment. Thanks. I have a note in my notes for this segment of the podcast to mention my successive series of phone calls with my friend Colleen, who I mentioned previously way back in episode 39. She is the person I was speaking to and about when I referred to having a 2.5-hour phone call that I proclaimed to be a perfect conversation. Since that time, we have had marathon phone calls once a month. When I realized this in October, I noted that I would like to mention this phenomenon on the show, but I didn't get around to it and kept moving the note forward to the following week. Now I have 2 notes to mention this because a few days ago we had our November call. To sum up, August was 5 hours, 33 minutes, and 55 seconds. We skipped September. October was 3 hours, 57 minutes, 34 seconds. November was 4 hours, 4 minutes, and 10 seconds. I am impressed by the consistency of all of this. In fact, the missed call in September was because she was out of the country and I was out of my mind, or both. Probably both. These marathon calls were also perfect. What is fascinating to me, which may be of use to you, is that Colleen and I have been friends for decades, but this level of ease with one another has only developed over the past 5 years or so. I know why this is. We have both been working hard on personal growth, self-acceptance, and not being the kind of people who clam up when it comes to discussing our personal eccentricities in favor of running at the mouth over the mundane. Discovering that our eccentricities are what make people special is what leads to monthly 4-hour conversations with our friends, minus a month when one of your friends goes to Italy and you just go to the P. Speaking of the P, I am here, baby! I often complain to myself and you about the segment of the population that has abandoned the simple decorum of using headphones for conversations, music, listening back to drafts of suicide notes, etc. But it is a futile affair. The gentleman across the way from me at the P is currently part of the problem, even though he doesn't mean to be. He is wearing headphones. I applaud the effort. However, his headphones are a problem in and of themselves because I can clearly hear what he is listening to. I posted about it on social media, and I will repeat here verbatim. If you're repeatedly listening to the 10,000 Maniacs cover of Because the Night so loud that I know you're listening to it, I am going to judge you on several levels. Now, in my pithy post, I did not elaborate on those judgment levels, but I will do so in this forum. First, this dude was also singing the song under his breath, which tells me, along with the repeated plays, that he loves the shit out of this song. Why? Is he a massive Natalie Merchant fan and doesn't even know or care that it's a cover? Is he aware of the superior Patti Smith original, and does he prefer the Maniacs version anyway? Does he also listen to Patti's version with as much fervor, and is this entire act a show of feminism to support the women who have taken a song originally written by Bruce Springsteen and made it their own? Obviously, my judgment also extends to being annoyed by this man's headphone volume and his bliss in what I have decided in my mind is wholly based on how he is irritating me. Still, I have reconciled this portion of my ire by arresting his behavior to serve a sentence in perpetuity in this podcast. I realize these questions will never be answered, but I welcome any feedback you may have about why any of this is happening in the first place. The night may belong to lovers, but clearly, this man's afternoon belongs to covers. That said, you can bet I am not done with this yet. I will also use this opportunity to acknowledge a vulnerability of my own as a person with a tendency towards scoundrel-like behavior. You see, the man I am referencing is someone I have seen here often. He is a very large man, probably as large as I used to be. My weight loss journey will be part of another book project that I have been taking notes on for years, but for now, it informs branch 3 of my 3-branch judgment tree. When I see this man, criticisms run through my brain, even though I am not at the end of my weight loss journey. Still, I am further along than this person, if he even is on such a journey, and that allows me to assume a position of superiority that my brain believes will balance my feelings of inferiority when it comes to the population who doesn't need to lose weight. Just before the pandemic, I was at my lightest physically, but at my heaviest emotionally. I thought my problems were solved because I was perceived as thin by the world now. Unfortunately, because I had only opened a Pandora's box of new problems and an awareness of the existing traumas that led to them, my criticisms of anyone who had not solved their weight issues, like I thought I had, were met with my internal monologue of tisk, tisk, tisk. Ironically, admitting and discussing this behavior is far more conducive to solving my problems than losing weight ever was. But really, bro needs to turn his headphones down. I will not budge on that issue. Also, budge rhymes with pudge. I wanted to mention this in case you're wondering if I learned anything here today. This is episode number 57 of the Josh Bloom may have revealed too much about his vendetta against the overweight dude with the too loud headphones, but it was done in the spirit of vulnerability, and Josh doesn't really have a vendetta. It's just a cool word to use instead of what he really has, which is a tendency to manifest his trauma in thoughts that do not comport with social norms, but that do comport with endeavoring to create sophisticated forms of progressive thought, intricate wordsmithing, and philosophical ingenuity, which rides side by side with Josh's realization that he himself exhibits the behaviors that he criticizes. And this revelation alone carries weight with it that the too loud dude does not, as he blissfully listens to 10,000 Maniacs instead of the one maniac that hosts the podcast, also known as the Josh Bloom Podcast. It is the latest edition of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration, days 285 through 291. This week on the show, on day 285, I addressed the cinephiles in the Josh Bloom Podcast audience when I reference a film that was discussed on Blank Check, one of the dozens of film podcasts I listen to. This film is the depressing and annoying Inside Llewyn Davis. Stay tuned to hear why I dislike it and how that relates to the leader I also dislike. My opinion on this film is unpopular, but I was psyched to see that one of my mentors agreed with me. On day 286, I casually mentioned casually seeing a casual uproar about the leader of the Trump administration's not-so-casual interview with the casually becoming a casualty news program, 60 Minutes. Sometimes I feel like I am the only person who sees all the words and deeds of this man through the singular lens that I have always seen him through, for both good and bad. I see him as a douche, a dick, a dum-dum. That was fine when he was a game show host, but absolute power is not a game. Anyway, we'll get to it. Day 287 fell on the day after the historic election that saw Zohran Mamdani become the mayor-elect of New York City. I did not follow this campaign closely, but I knew that people I felt comfortable with him, and I knew that people I didn't feel comfortable with didn't. We will see what happens when he takes office, but the decisive wins for Democrats did happen, and these wins indicate to me that the message of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration shines through the shit. Mindfulness, optimism, and hope. Let's go! I return to Film Talk on day 288 to say that I have never seen the film Scarface, but I know enough to know that the lead character, Tony Montana, is incredibly corrupt and has extremely gaudy taste. This is just like some other thug we know. Do I need to say his name? Here's a clue. Gold-plated. I confess that I have never seen someone in public life who is so devoid of any attachment to aesthetic quality. I realize this is a minor observation considering all the problems we face, but I still believe that a lack of aesthetics is a problem worth acknowledging. On day 289, I somehow express backhanded gratitude to the Trump administration for exposing the racist, bigoted, and violent people among us so that we can avoid them. I guess it's good that these kinds of people feel like they can be themselves for the moment, kind of like a breath of fresh air in the atmosphere of hell. I would expect no less from the followers of a leader who is fighting in the Supreme Court to keep poor children from getting access to food stamps. On day 290, I am pissed about the leader of the Trump administration withholding food stamps from needy citizens that he is supposed to be helping, but I also have a take that tells me we are nearing the end of this madness. I have said he will take us to the bottom before we can rebuild from that perspective. We're getting there, and that means a new day will dawn. I also say duty on this day, so that's fun. On day 291, I discuss a sense memory I had the other day about feeling like surviving the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration feels like surviving the pandemic. We were all confused and scared for a time, but then we began to manage our lives in a way that allowed us to persevere, remain productive, and continue planning for our futures. We are doing the same as we continue to ignore the Trump administration. Don't forget to follow me on all of my social media. Links can be found at superjews.com, superjews.com, or IamJoshBloom.com. I provide that second link, which goes to the same link tree as the first link, just in case you are someone who doesn't want to type the word Jews. I understand. We can talk about it further someday. But since I brought it up, I am a Jew and sorry, but yes, I do want your money. Or at least I want my publisher to get your money so that I can recoup the advance on my book. That's how I eventually get someone else's money. Get it? What I am saying here is to pre-order a copy of my book about the exceedingly fine band, the Apples in Stereo. Go to applesbook.com, where you will find all of your favorite booksellers to choose from. By the way, Mark Masters, the esteemed journalist for Rolling Stone, The Washington Post, and Pitchfork, says, "This book is a different style of band biography than I'm used to, and I like it." Josh Bloom really knows Robert Schneider and the Apples in Stereo, and he doesn't hide it. In fact, his own relationship with the band and the music is an integral part of the story, offering a uniquely compelling view of a uniquely compelling band. Mark interviewed me last week for the podcast he hosts called The Music Book Podcast, and I will let you know when that interview goes live so you can supplement your listening to the Josh Bloom podcast with listening to Josh Bloom on a podcast. Thanks for listening, and now let's get into 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. Just so you know, I am at my kitchen table again now, listening to one of the TikTok debaters that I listen to daily. I want to curb this habit as I am trying to be mindful of consuming too much in the way of political content. I mean, duh. But these young people sure do have a handle on the optimistic way of looking at life that I, as a less younger person, try to emulate daily. I would like it if my old flame, whom I have mentioned the last few weeks and will likely mention again, would check these guys out. He comes from a right-wing culture and is not too much older than these guys, so maybe there is some hope for him. Maybe there is some hope you'll hear more about him, too. I feel like his story, if it turns out well, could be the kind of inspiring tale more people need to hear. Yes, I have now introduced a dramatic narrative for you to tune into. It's all content. I'll be back soon. Enjoy. Day 285 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. If you are a cinephile, today is for you. I was listening to the current episode of the film discussion podcast Blank Check. The series they are currently in the middle of is on the Coen brothers, and today's film is Inside Llewyn Davis, which the host and guest say is their favorite Coen brothers movie and one they love in general. I remember seeing this movie in the theater and really disliking it and couldn't remember exactly why, so I wanted to listen to this episode for that reason. I thought that I probably felt this way because of my 3+ decades long career in the music industry. This film is about a struggling musician, so maybe it was just too on the nose for me, and that must have been why I didn't like it. But as I was listening to the episode of Blank Check, as they began to discuss the entire film and the lead character in detail, I began to be reminded of why I didn't like it. Apparently, the lead character, Llewyn Davis, is a total asshole, and the depiction of this life is incredibly depressing. It took me right back. It wasn't being reminded of these two facts from listening to the episode of Blank Check that brought me back. It was literally a sense memory. I could feel what it felt like when I saw this film almost 22 years ago. I said out loud, "Oh, this is why I hated this movie. This guy's a dick, and everything that happens to him and is caused by him is totally fucking depressing." I don't like movies like that. I know that real life is like that. And in fact, I think I know that real life is like that too much because I have a feeling this movie reminded me too much of what it's like to be an asshole who is constantly mired in depressing episodes in his life. I don't need to be reminded of that in my entertainment. This is also why I am ignoring the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. I have said it many, many times. My main gripe is with the guy, which goes back decades, just like my gripe with this film. The main character is a dick, and I don't need reminders of what that feels like. Some of my favorite movies are Caddyshack, Animal House, and The Blues Brothers. I appreciate when life is presented with absurd interpretations. Continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 286 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I am casually seeing an uproar about the leader of the Trump administration's interview with the becoming quite questionable news program 60 Minutes. I saw the outrage first and saw the clips next. The outrage is understandable, but misplaced in my personal assessment. The outrage is based on policy disagreements, ethical disagreements, and ideological disagreements, which is fine, but my personal disagreement is more simply about character. The leader of the Trump administration is just a man, and this particular man, as I have said many times before, and need to say again because the outrage is steaming, this particular man, in my opinion, is a dick. He is someone who, if he was the same person as he is now, without the power and the money and the quote unquote prestige of a person who has incredibly bad taste, would still make me think, man, that guy's an asshole. And I'm saying this as someone who has been thought of as an asshole by some people during my lifetime. I was a traumatized little boy who became a traumatized little man and had to spend a significant portion of my adulthood working through issues to become a person that could function in society. Unlike the leader of the Trump administration, who became a person who created his own society of Oompa Loompas, aka the Trump administration, surrounding him like some Willy Wonka with cotton candy instead of chocolate. They glaze him with positive affirmations about his bad behavior every day. The clip I watched from this 60 Minutes interview was about how the leader of the Trump administration does not seem to care how his personal police force treats the citizens of this country when he decides they are not citizens. This reveals the kind of human being he is, which is not very human, and he won't be being in public life much longer anyway, since this is his final term, regardless of what anyone says. Soon, different leadership will be allowed to be their own kind of asshole to another portion of the nation. But until then, I'll ignore the one I think of that way. And if you feel that way too, ignore the Trump administration. Day 287 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. See, I told you good things happen when you ignore the Trump administration. The message of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration has always been mindfulness, optimism, and hope. And as we see from last night's election results, which saw sweeping wins by Democrats that could not be disputed because the margins were large, people want to feel mindful, optimistic, and hopeful. I did not follow much of Zohran's mayoral race, even though I have lived in and around New York City for most of my life, because I'm not just ignoring the Trump administration, I'm ignoring politics in general. But I saw enough to see someone who was clearly a mindful, optimistic, and hopeful person. And I also saw enough to know why so many people are threatened by him. That is okay. Because as we see with the worst of the worst of the worst, also known as the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration, we are surviving. There are people in America who continue to smile, one of them being the new mayor of New York City, and will continue to smile because they know that being mindful, optimistic, and hopeful is the way to stay mindful, optimistic, and hopeful. I was impressed with the concession speeches I heard, which were in the correct tone. And when I say correct tone, correct is the correct word, because that is how you do it. You don't need to declare that you are abandoning your views, even if your views should be abandoned. You just say that you wish the winner the best and hope that they will serve all of the people. Zohran may have been very harsh on the leader of the Trump administration in his victory speech, but what other option did he have? Look who he is dealing with. When he said, Donald Trump, I have 4 words for you, I thought those words were going to be eat my ass, bitch. But they were not. They were turn the volume up, and that's aggressive enough. Back to the leader of the Trump administration and his followers, be they people who oppose or approve. We have been here before, where the pendulum begins to swing left, and we forget that it can swing right back to where it swung from. So please remember, we are dealing with somebody who is vengeful to his core. His joy at taking it out on all of us now has a renewed motivation. Continue to ignore the Trump administration. Day 288 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Are you a fan of the film Scarface? I don't know if he is able to remember the film Scarface anymore, but the leader of the Trump administration thinks he is Scarface, even though I don't think he has ever seen Scarface. And like I said, he is likely too dementia-riddled by now to remember anyway. I know that I have never seen Scarface, but I listened to a podcast the other day that went through the film scene by scene over the course of several episodes and many hours. And now that I feel like I have an understanding of Scarface, it reminds me of the leader of the Trump administration. How? Mostly because of the corruption, but also because of the incredibly gaudy taste. I know that is probably not what most people are focused on when it comes to the many character flaws of the leader of the Trump administration, but frankly, it is one of the most egregious aspects of his personality as far as I'm concerned as a gay Jewish American who has taste. The leader of the Trump administration's taste level is truly despicable and an all-out assault on the senses. He lies when he says he has solved wars, but if he really wants the Nobel Peace Prize, I suggest he makes peace with his instincts to decorate. I have never seen someone in public life who is so devoid of any kind of attachment to aesthetic quality. He thinks that gold and marble is the beginning, middle, and end of the story. I think the only gold that actually exists is on the tapes the Russians are holding above his head, and the only marble that exists is the block in between his ears. And when I refer to ears, I mean those incredibly uninjured ears. I realize it is quite petty of me to bring up the leader of the Trump administration's history of tackiness in drawing the Scarface relation. I admit that shortcoming of mine, and now I will return to ignoring the Trump administration. Day 289 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, just trying to help myself. Do you realize that we would never know about some of the garbage human beings we are walking around the planet with if not for the rise of the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration? He has given permission for racist people to be racist, bigoted people to be bigoted, and violent people to be violent. It is such a woke concept for everyone to get to be exactly who they are, isn't it? I am reminded of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, frankly. But really, the leader of the Trump administration is currently fighting to keep the people he is supposed to be governing from getting their health care. He is fighting to keep his people from being able to eat. And he is fighting to keep people who are here legally from being able to live in peace. We are seeing how some of his supporters, the ones I describe above, have come out in favor of these cruel policies. In fact, even supporters who are having their own health care, their own food supply, and their own way of life stripped from them seem to be gaslit by their cult leader into thinking that somehow this is a good thing. Look, are there abuses in systems? Of course. In fact, there is one system that is constantly abused: the office of the presidency. And the leader of the Trump administration is currently the prime abuser of that system. We have seen him use the Justice Department to go after his political enemies, pardon criminals, and put them to work in order to line his pockets, and take out his vengeance and anger on anyone who doesn't support his bizarre, demented mind. Now that we have seen the supporters of the leader of the Trump administration expose themselves to us, it is to our benefit because we can be aware of them and avoid them. I am surprised that so many of my fellow Americans can be so bad. But I refuse to believe that the bad ones are the majority because I interact with too many lovely people every day. Even though some people harbor hatred for their fellow citizens, I don't need an explanation. I respect your right to hate. Please respect my right to ignore the Trump administration. Day 290 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, just trying to help myself. You might not have the money to go out to eat tonight, but quite a few Americans don't have the money to stay in to eat tonight because not only have their SNAP benefits been cut off, but the latest news, and I realize I do not report news here, but how can I help it in this case? The latest news is that Donald Trump woke up on Sunday morning and demanded that states who went ahead and paid out SNAP benefits have to take those benefits back. Now, why do I feel like my reaction to this is different than most? I'm not angry on behalf of my fellow Americans. I am grateful. Because to me, on the basis of behavioral analysis, this tells me we are getting close to the end of this nonsense because the nonsense is nonsensing to a degree that indicates that the bottom that I've said that the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration would take us to is arriving. And then we can see everything in perspective and begin to rebuild. We are headed there right now. And I understand that some people may think the bottom is the end of humanity, the end of the planet, the end of existence. That's not going to happen, especially because of the fact that as Americans, while we have extreme differences, we all agree that no one wants their lives to end, especially not for one bitter, elderly, brain damaged man. So, I say to those who are scared, to those who are hungry, to those who feel like they are pushed to the breaking point by the dereliction of duty of the leader of the Trump administration, when you are thinking about that dereliction of duty, think about it as dereliction of DOODY, because this is a man who craps himself, and when you think of that, you will laugh. Just like when Spaulding Smales, the character in the film Caddyshack, when he yells, "Duty!" thinking that a Baby Ruth bar in the pool is duty. Feel better now? Good. Hang in there and laugh at Donald's duty situation, and then go back to ignoring the Trump administration. Day 291 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I had a feeling the other day that surviving the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration is like surviving the pandemic. There was a time during COVID when we were so confused and deeply concerned about what was happening and what would be happening. This feeling was universal. It was not political. If you encounter a car crash on the road that blocks traffic in both directions, at that moment, it doesn't matter what caused the crash or how it will be cleared. This is not the Fast and the Furious. We are all blocked, right? Not even Vin Diesel is getting through. Even though the supporters of the leader of the Trump administration believe their car is still moving, it is because their windows are tinted and the vehicle is being shaken from the outside by nefarious actors to make the driver believe the car is still moving forward. It's not. It is a deception, and deception is what the leader of the Trump administration is best at. However, just like COVID, although we may not have had all of the information we needed at the beginning, as time passed, we came to understand the reality of what we were dealing with. Then we began to manage our lives in a way that allowed us to persevere, remain productive, and continue planning for our futures with the belief that the virus would eventually no longer be a threat to us. This is also true for the leader of the Trump administration and the Trump administration. The nefarious forces of this person and the people he gathers around him will never be eliminated. There will always be another generation of disease. But we manage that because it is in our nature. Even if we find ourselves in situations that make us feel fatalistic, these feelings are primarily based in our imagination. Try to redirect that energy and ignore the Trump administration. Hey, it's Josh. I am still at the kitchen table. I am surprised that the sense memory I talked about regarding surviving the pandemic didn't occur to me earlier. It really does feel the same, and I am glad for it because it is an excellent real-life, real-time, and just plain old realistic metaphor during confusing times when dealing with scary situations we don't understand and working our way out of them. I also noticed that not only did I mention my old flame last week, but I mentioned how I am trying to accept my feelings for this disruptive person so that I can deal with him and us in a way that might have benefits for us both, rather than what has been, which is two people running away from a reality we both contributed to making. I don't mean to sound so heavy here at the end of the show. I am saving the many stories that this relationship has generated over the years for a book. But as I said, I am continuing this dramatic thread because it seems like I have already introduced it. As usual, if you would like to express your gratitude and appreciation for the show I am doing, you can do so via the popular beverage that has come to be known as coffee. You can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Josh Bloom. And while you have that credit card working, consider grabbing a copy of the book, which is already receiving great praise from actual journalists who have a lot more experience with writing than I do. Visit applesbook.com for links to purchase the nearly 200-page book featuring 22 photos, many of which have never been published before. All of your typical booksellers are represented there. Thanks again for listening. Please leave a 5-star rating for the Josh Bloom Podcast in your podcast app and leave a comment saying that you like the show. I realize that the release schedule for this show is wonky, but it is because I am generating other content all the time too. Please be patient with me. And speaking of other content, again, please visit my YouTube channel to watch the long-awaited new Come With Me to See episode. You could also tell a friend to watch that episode and report back to you. You could say something like, hey, this dude I know named Josh Bloom put up a video on YouTube where he spends more time talking about his experiences buying McMuffins than pretty much any person ever has. I can tell you that this is not out of the ordinary for this somewhat strange person. Your friend will likely respond, whoa, that guy sounds weird. Does he have a podcast? You see what we did there? Your friend has now given you the opportunity to tell them about the Josh Bloom podcast. What a treat. Lastly, visit me everywhere for everything by going to superjews.com or IamJoshBloom.com for links to all of my social media, long-form Substack writing, YouTube playlists, TikTok posts, poetry, and more. Thanks again for listening. See you next week.